All right, let's get started. Before we begin though, if everyone can note where the viewer box is and relocate that to the bottom right corner, that'll be the least disrupted place during the presentation. And also note the Q&A button at the bottom. If you can submit questions during the presentation, we'll field them as we go, and there's also a Q&A at the end. All right, let me introduce the speakers to you. I'm Luke, I'll be facilitating this presentation. I'm also new to the eDiscovery industry, but came to love StoryEngine and Relativity as I've been using it more and more with marketing. Next up we have Zeph. He's our AI and TAR advocate, and he's also a real stickler for clear and defined budgets. Then we have Tracy. She's been in the industry longer than I can even count, and she's also the keystone to every eDiscovery project there is. And then we have Keith. Keith's the checklist and process kind of guy who's always into having a thorough plan for every project. All right, so we just updated our relativity from version 9.5 to 10.1. We've held off on version 10.2 because we weren't ready to introduce the new search features that come with it to our clients. We also updated NextLP from 2.12 to 2.4, and we run our processing through Nuix. All right, so on the agenda today, we're going to start off with relativity active learning. Then we're going to follow that with NextLP's new StoryEngine entity modeling. Then Relativity's new name normalization feature. We'll wrap it all up with some user interface enhancements, followed by a Q&A. Now I'm going to hand it off to Keith to get us started.
Thanks, Luke. Hi, everyone. It's Zeph. It's okay, Luke.
All right.
Let's take a look at analytics by the numbers. As you can tell, in the last 5 years, it's up little over 1,200%. This is due to the increased data volumes. As you can see, the large jump from 2018 to 2019. And in the last 12 months, 91% of Relativity users have used analytics. To the right, you'll see our CEO and founder, Leah Majid, and she brings over a unique experience with her engineering MBA and her very mathy ways that she's brought over to this company with the idea that advanced analytics was the future. And as we dive deeper, you'll see a lot of her philosophies have been built in. Let's take a look at active learning. Active learning here at Acorn is what we pride ourselves heavily on. This is something that we like to call our bread and butter. And the reason why is because we're seeing a larger adoption due to data volumes. Data volumes continue to increase. And what this means is in the past, we're used to simple text messaging and email communications. And now, as you can see, there's a big pile of data. You have Slack, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint. And as you can tell, it causes a lot of frustration for users, attorneys trying to find key documents. And what does this really mean in our eyes is we really break this down into two simple buckets, or two simple ways, I should say. Things you care about, which is the thumbs up, and things that you simply don't care about in your case, which is the thumbs down. Now, the things you care about, obviously on a case-by-case basis, can change. It could be you care about certain documents because they're responsive to your case. They could be just specifically due to privileged, or you could be trying to sift through documents to find the skeletons that may exist and start to develop a case strategy. What we like to do at Acorn is really look at TAR in three forms. Generally, attorneys look at TAR as let's put eyeballs on every document, which at one point in time was great, and I'm not saying it's not today. However, if you take a look, we go back to the method of things you care about and things you don't. And the first way is, again, eyeballs on every document. This is the most comfortable for attorneys. It's the one that they feel most confident that could be that they can defend. You put eyeballs on everything, nothing is missed, and it's the one that helps them rest most easy at night. The second way is you could put eyeballs on everything being produced and take a sneak peek at the things you don't care about. This is also a comfortable form for attorneys. And then the third way, which is the least comfortable as of today, but we here at Acorn believe it's the way the industry is headed, is you can put eyeballs only on enough documents to train the model. What this means is you begin putting eyeballs on a few documents, responsive, non-responsive, and then it starts to feed you information on what you would predict if you were to put eyeballs on everything. This is something that it's the least comfortable, like I said. However, it's what we feel like is the way the industry is headed due to the increased data volumes, because eventually this will be the most cost effective. If we take a look at the old way, and the way we look at prioritized review is to the left, you have this black box and you have your documents inside of this black box, and you really don't know everything that's in there. So you start to tag your blue documents as privileged, and historically with prioritized review, it'll continue to feed you blue documents and just keep serving you up blues. The risk with this approach is if you look to the left and take a deeper look inside of the box, you have your green and red documents that you don't really know even exist in this universe of documents, and you may have missed a thing or two. The new way, or coverage queue, starts to feed you up not only the blues, but it feeds you up the reds and the greens. So what this means is early on in your case, and you're going to review more non-responsive documents than you would in the previous slide. However, you'll have a more holistic view of the entire universe of documents and a better understanding moving forward of case strategy. And to further explain, I'm going to pass it along to Tracy to show you a few photos and snippets and explain in more detail how coverage queue exactly works.
Thank you, Zeph. So what you see here is the active learning project page inside of Relativity. And this is what it looks like before we really get started with the review. So you have your two queues that are your options: prioritize review and coverage queue. And then you have your document rank distribution chart. So when documents are added to your active learning case, they're assigned a number between 0 and 100. And in the beginning, they're just in this gray area between 40 and 60. 0 is not relevant and 100 being relevant. So the idea of active learning is that you train the system until it splits the documents into not relevant, relevant. So the old way is the prioritized review. And in some cases, this may be the preferred method. So I don't really call it the old way. But what that does is it serves you documents across all the different ranks until all of the responsive documents are reviewed. And so you're getting documents that are similar to what you've already coded, regardless of what the rank is. So the coverage queue is the newer option. And if your goal is to separate documents into not responsive and responsive very quickly, coverage queue will sample documents from that gray area until you've reached a point where documents are segregated. So it's going to more quickly go through the document sets, give you different variations of documents that it hasn't learned from yet, and then quickly differentiate between non-responsive and responsive, and then you can move on with your workflow for that project. Now, NextLP's had coverage queue for a long time, and it's still our preferred prediction model. It gives you more accurate results more quickly, but both Relativity and StoryEngine, NextLP, is available to you. So with Relativity, there's perceived to be no cost because it's built into your hosting charges. more courts, opposing counsels, attorneys are comfortable with it because the name's been around for a long time. And if you're planning to have eyeballs on everything, it's really a win-win situation with relativity. With StoryEngine, there's an actual reduced cost overall because the system has, it learns more quickly and is more accurate, and so your total review is shorter. The other thing that's really good with StoryEngine is that you can create a template from your review model and you can apply that to other cases so that you can more quickly get up and running with other litigation cases.
All right, and next up, speaking of NextLP, we're going to be talking about their new feature that we just upgraded to, which is called entity modeling. And entity modeling is something that I really think that the industry is just starting to uncover all of its value. But the way that we're using it right now is specifically for PII and PHI. And the need to find PII has always been there with regulations like HIPAA. But over the past few years, it's really become in the spotlight. And with GDPR coming out a couple of years ago, CCPA coming out at the beginning of the year, then all the data breaches that have been in the news like Equifax. And you really want to find all this PII and redact it just to really make sure that you and your client don't have a loss of reputation, as well as to avoid sanctions and fines. So the way that most people are finding PII right now is with regular expressions. And for those of you that don't know, regular expressions is just a way to search patterns. And today we're going to be using the example of social security numbers. And so one of the regular expressions would always find any numbers that had 3 numbers, and then a dash, and then 2 numbers, and then a dash, and then 4 numbers. But that's going to miss 9 straight numbers or any other way that may be written. Then other social security numbers or other regular expressions may find those 9 straight numbers. But with that, you're going to have a lot of false positives. But then the third way that we're seeing more common that it's being written out is that some of the numbers are going to be written in words and then others in numbers. And people are doing this just so that their social security numbers can't be scraped. We've seen this for email addresses and a few other ways with PII. And that's something that entity modeling is really going to be good at finding, just because it's not only using regular expressions. So with entity modeling, what NextLP does is we put in the regular expression into the model, and it's going to use the same AI that we've been using for TAR for a while now, but to find more social security numbers for you. So that way, it's not only going to find the results from the regular expression, but then also give you other things that it thinks will be a social security number. From there, it's going to be more work up front because you're going to need to QC just the same way that you would need to stabilize the TAR model. But from there, and you can reuse this model over and over again in future cases. So over the long haul, it's really going to save you a lot of time. And then from there, once you have all your social security numbers, you can either put it into a mass redaction tool, or you can batch it off to reviewers to redact. And I'm going to pass it off to Tracy to show you an example of this.
All right, just give me a split second while I switch screens here. All right, you should see my StoryEngine. All right, cool. So I'm going to walk you, excuse me, I'm going to walk you through what a quick process looks like in StoryEngine. So in order to start training and teaching at your entity model, you create a search term report. So I'm going to show you the search term report. So we have one already set up that we have already run, and this is your regular expression for social security numbers. Excuse me. So after you run your search term report with your regular expression, it starts to find the documents that match that pattern. So then what we have to do is a QC process to verify the pattern's correct, that those are social security numbers, but then also identify other forms of social security numbers to help train the social security number model. So I'm going to search for my social security number entities. Hit apply. So it found 10 threads in our demo set. So I'm going to run a search for those. And then I'm going to jump into a thread so I can see what it's found for me. Now over here I have my entities, and I only want to look at social security numbers. I want to enable editing. I want to look at just my hits. So let's see what we've got. So here's an example of a social security number that it found. And as you can see, it gives me a plus or minus here because I need to verify that that's part of my entity model. And then I can go to my next hit. This is one that I previously found and added to the entity model. It's the variation that doesn't have any hyphens. It's very simple to add other versions of a social security number. I'm just going to pretend that that's I gotta be in story version. That's why it's not working. So if I just select text, it gives me my pop-up of the entities it can belong to. And then I would select social security number if that's how I wanted to train it. And then I can continue on. So at any point, first you find some social security numbers and you start adding it as examples. And then during your normal review, you would find variations of the social security number, add it to as examples, and then the system will continue to learn as the entity model is continuously building in the background. And then periodically, I can go out and see what it's found. So here's my launch pad. Here are my social security numbers that it's found. And I can now select the social security numbers and I can act on it however I need to in my workflow. Back to you, Keith.
Perfect. Now, the next thing that we're going to be talking about is a new feature in Relativity called name normalization. And this is something that we've been using with NextLP for a while now, but Relativity has recently added it. And let's say you were working on an investigation. And in this case, it's going to be Donald Trump. And you're trying to find all the ways that he's communicated. And it could be with donald.trump@whitehouse.gov, djt@trumptowers.com, all of his other email addresses, or even his Twitter. So trying to search for all of these has been very complex in the past. So you need to do and search for all these examples in the to, in the from, in the CC, in the BCC. But you may even miss some that you didn't know existed if you're trying to be specific. Or in this example where it's like, you may miss the DJT. But now with a name normalization, in this case with Philip Allen, you're going to see all the different aliases that Philip Allen has communicated with, just to make searching for those a lot easier. And we also see this in privlogs, just because the privileged communication can be coming from any of these email addresses. But now when you're making that privlog, and if you're extracting the information, you can just extract Philip Allen. So I'm going to pass it off to Tracy to show you this slide.
Thank you. Righty. Have to switch over here. And the first thing I'm going to show you is the entity page in Relativity. So entities are built using a structured analytics set. And when you run the structured analytics set, it goes through all of your emails, the headers, and even the header segments from each thread inside of an email. And it collects all of the different variations of the name, and it assigns these to aliases. And then it creates an entry called an entity, which is the full name that you see here. And typically when we run name normalization, there might be some variations in the entities that it creates and doesn't associate all of the different aliases. So for key players in your case, we do recommend a QC process so that you can merge some of these outliers and make sure that all of the names are cleaned up. But here's an example of one that we may have already looked at, because you can see the one name entity, I've already filtered for it, John Arnold, and all the different aliases that have been found for him in this set. So now I'm going to jump into a document list that I've set up for John Arnold. Now the fields that we capture during processing are populated in email from, email to, email CC, email BCC. And during name normalization, it populates the fields entity from, entity to, entity CC, BCC, and if I scroll over to the right, entity recipient and participant. So entity from to CC, BCC are taken from the top email header. Recipient is a combination of to CC, BCC. So this can simplify your searching so that you're only searching against entity recipient or entity from if you want to do searches against email communicators. And then entity participant is a combination of all the names found within the body of an email. So I'm going to open up this particular email. So the email from is Ring, email to is Laura Luce, but then there's all these different threads, and in name normalizations, they're called segments. They're also called segments in StoryEngine. It reads the names within each of these, and then it populates that participant panel. And that can simplify searching for names found within email threads. Like previously, if you wanted to find a name that was only a from to in an email thread, you basically can't do it. So now you can do it with entity participant. Another new feature of name normalization is the communication analysis widget. Say that really fast, multiple times. And this will bring up a communication pattern so that you can see all of the people that this person is communicating with. And if you're looking at documents, you know, from an analysis point of view, this could be an important view for you. All right, back to you.
Thanks, Tracy.
There you go.
So those three technologies are what we view as the sort of game-changing technologies that are being developed between Relativity and StoryEngine. And we think that those previous three tools that we showed you will fundamentally change how eDiscovery is done. So it'll change the economics, and it'll help you find insight faster. In addition to that, there are a number of very tactical upgrades that the software has made. And the 5 that we'd like to highlight for you are these 5 user interface enhancements. So Relativity has introduced the cluster wheel, which is a new way of viewing the sort of concept charts that Tracy will walk you through. They've also streamlined their file upload and download operations. So there's a simple file upload and a viewer dropdown that Tracy will show you. And then Relativity has really invested a lot in making its AV streaming and transcript handling a lot more user-friendly and a lot more actionable. So Tracy's going to walk you through that here for about 7 minutes, and then we'll move on to questions and answers. So be sure to submit those at the bottom if you have them.
Once again, I'm transitioning. All right, now you should see the dial pack. So the dial pack was actually introduced in a previous version of Relativity, but I believe with the latest version, they have made it the default, as it's just much simpler to understand than the older circle pack. Some of the things that you can do with clustering is prioritize or organize your review. You can explore your data set because it clusters the documents and gives them names for each of the clusters that are representative of the documents. You can do quality control, use it to do quality control, but one of the other things that you can do with it is with active learning, in order to start the queues, we need to find responsive documents and also non-responsive in order to give it something that it can learn from to feed up the responsive documents. So what we have here is the dial pack cluster visualization. And then over on the right, we have the key terms that we've searched for in the database. So I'm going to pick out the search terms that have the most impact on my case, that I think have the most impact on my case, because this is also an investigation. And I'm going to filter my dial pack by those key terms and create what's called like a heat map of where these documents might be. Now the darker colors mean that it has a higher concentration of the documents that I've selected. So if I hover over the sections, the legend will change and show me which colors have the highest concentration. So my eye immediately goes to this dark red version because the darker colors mean there's more documents. And this section has an 86% match. So I can click and select it, and I can apply my filter. And so if I scroll down to the bottom of my dashboard, I have a document list, which is now filtered to that particular cluster that has a high concentration of documents that match the key terms I've selected. And I can jump into one and start reviewing it and then take action. So that is the dial pack. The next thing on my list to show you is the simple file upload. Give me just a minute to reset my screen so we can show that. All right, so some of you may have used the single file upload, and it has now been enhanced so you can upload up to 100 documents. Therefore, they changed it to simple file upload. And you can do that using a very simple drag and drop method. So gotta wait for the system to get ready to take on my documents. There we go. So I'm gonna select just a couple of them from what I want to upload, and I drag them over into my window. And notice it's asking for a control number, and it's populating with my file name. But I want to use a control number instead of the file. So I'm just going to assign it a number, and then I'm going to update this one. And notice it copied the file name. It's in gray, so hopefully you can see that, like right below the dialog box. And I have my control number here. If your files are already named with the control number, it will pick that off of your files. So now I'm going to upload. And then what it does when it's uploading is it captures your doc ID, populates the family ID with the doc ID because these are considered single documents. It updates the native file type, file extension, file name, and file size, and it also extracts text. Now, what I would not use simple file upload for are emails, because it does not pick apart the email header and update those fields. It also does not extract attachments. So I really recommend this just on like eDocs, PDFs, Word, Excel, something like that. And if searching is a criteria for you, you can still upload the documents using simple file upload, but then there's additional steps to add text to it through OCR and then update the index. I'm going to close that. And now you can see my documents added to my folder, and I can take action on those. So I'm going to jump in here and open the document viewer so we can talk about the next enhancements that they added. So the next one that we wanted to bring to your attention is the download icon. So a while ago, Relativity took out the native viewer option from the view bar, and they did that to, I believe it was security concerns, trying to tighten down Relativity's security model. But what they failed to understand was how tricky it was for people to understand then how to download a native file. And it wasn't intuitive because you had to click on this icon next to the doc ID, but it wasn't obvious. So that created a lot of support calls, and I think a lot of support calls to Relativity as well. And so they added this new icon next to the doc ID, which makes it more obvious where you download. If you click on that, it will download and open the file to your desktop. I'm going to scroll through the rest of the documents in my folder. And then this one is a video, which brings me to the next user interface enhancement that has been added. And that is support for audio and video. So if you have audio video in your collection, which a lot of them do, there are only certain file types that are supported, and it also varies by browser. But typically the ones we've been seeing are a supported version. So we have this one, I'll play it for you. And it's buffering. So the built-in support for audio video is really great because it takes care of all the onesie-twosie handling that you have in your cases. Now, before we had this built into Relativity, we used a product by Veritone, which we still highly recommend because it supports a broad file type for audio video. It also supports transcription and analysis of audio and video if that is something that has a need in your case. So keep that in mind. The last thing I'm going to talk about is transcripts. So let me get out to the main section here. Okay, so transcript handling has been a part of Relativity for a long time, but very few people actually use it. I think a lot of people don't even know that it exists, and Relativity's put a lot of effort into the transcript application over the last year, just updating it and making it more user-friendly. One of the things they did was add the ability to upload transcripts using the simple file upload, and you can create a customizable dialog box so that when you add transcripts into Relativity, you can capture more fields about the deposition and have them be associated with it when it's uploaded. And then it'll also go into the transcript folder. So I'm going to jump into one of the transcripts. One of the nice things about having transcripts as part of your Relativity workspace is that you have a user interface that everybody's already familiar with using. So you can have documents that you are reviewing to produce, you can have documents being produced to you, and you can have your transcripts and the exhibits available in the same workspace, just making it very simple to find things associated with your case. So this is the transcript view, and there's a couple new things on the toolbar. There's the ability to expand all the notes so they're readily visible as you're scrolling through your transcript. And the Save Print button has been customized so that it is specific to transcript handling. Now, the other thing that they've added to transcript management is the ability to play video transcripts and sync the text, which isn't a new concept, but with Relativity, I think it's a newer thing. So as your transcript plays, your text synchronizes alongside, and then you can pause your video transcript at any point and you can make commentary about it. So if you, I'm going to find a section I haven't already been playing with. If I wanted to make a note about this section, I can highlight my text. I right click over it and I can add a note that gets added into the database and becomes searchable. I can add a designation and I can pick one I've already selected, or I can add a new designation and I have a broader palette of colors associated with it. I'm going to cancel out of that because I don't need to add another one. And then we also typically create a transcript panel that you can set up fields that you want to capture, but then all of your designation exhibits associated with your transcript, designation, notes, URLs are all right at your fingertips here. The other feature that transcript has is a word index, and it brings up a dialog box with all the words, and you can search up to 5 words, and I'm going to put in the root of a term. And then as you can see, it found four words in the transcript list, and I can highlight over the page line combination, and it will show me a set number of lines before and after the word so that I can determine if I want to jump to that section. So say I want to jump to this particular page and line. It lets me do that. And I can also select that line, right click, and then I can go to the video from this line and start playing it. So these are all great features that have been added to Relativity, all in the one workspace to help you use the workspace to its fullest. Now, if there are any features we've demoed here that you don't have access to, it's probably a permissions thing. So you can email your project manager and ask them to give you access to it. And if you need any help using these features, contact your project manager as well. Luke?
All right, thank you, Tracy. This time we're gonna start answering some questions. We already got one right here. I think this one's for you, Tracy. With the
good.
upload, will I be able to upload document productions with assigned bait numbers to our Relativity host site?
If you have productions that you've received in like PDF format, then you could upload it using simple file upload. Keep in mind you only have like 100 documents at a time. It is gonna, if you do upload 100 documents at a time, you're gonna wait for a couple minutes while it does that. So if you have a lot of them, you could send them to your project manager. If you also have a production in a load-ready format, it's probably best to send it to your project manager.
Thank you for that, Tracy. All right, let's see. Next one we have here. Does name normalization also let you search by organization? As in, can you pull up everything from Enron talking to everyone at the government?
That is a good question, and I will have to get back to you on that. I believe that it would, I don't think it captures organization entities. I believe it's names.
Okay. Let's see. Next one here, go with, oh, can you use active learning for issue coding?
Typically the way we've set that up is we don't code issues during active learning, but we will set up a concept index and give you issues on your review panel so that you can code examples for issues and then periodically run a relativity categorization set to identify the issues. So you'll be doing like you'll be coding for those, but not using the active learning indexes. You'll be using the more traditional categorization with concepts.
Awesome. All right. Let's see if we can bring out one more before we wrap this up. Let's go with if you have a production of really bad data and all documents are scanned images of paper with no metadata, will entity modeling help you code the metadata?
Yeah, I believe we did run a test for that. And because it reads in the body of the text, it will pull out the names where it finds it if they're like scanned emails. I don't know how accurate it's going to be. StoryEngine does a really great job with poor data sets. It actually is better at entity, like the name normalization. So that might be something we would take a look at your data collection and then make some recommendations on.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending our webinar today. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn, and make sure to reach out to us directly. Keep your eye out for a follow-up email that will contain more information and also a recording of the webinar. Yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.